a 5-year-old could come up with it.
There was even more backlash when the North Yorkshire Police and Crime Commissioner, Philip Allott, said in a radio interview, "So women first of all need to be streetwise about when they can be arrested and when they can't be arrested. She should never have been arrested and submitted to that,"
34.
which was condemned by many as victim blaming. Following a vote of no confidence, he resigned.
26.
While in custody, Wayne Couzens would be taken to hospital with a head injury for a second time, and a few hours later, he was subsequently charged with kidnap and murder. The investigations continued,
35.
and police were in various locations hunting for clues, and specialist divers were brought in to help search a small stretch of water. Senior coroner Patricia Harding told the inquest into Sarah's death that the pathologist has not given a medical cause of death. However, she was able to confirm that no natural disease was found that could have caused her death, and that tests would continue to work out exactly how she had died. It would later be determined that she had been raped, and that her cause of death was compression to the neck, having been strangled by a police belt. On the 22nd of May, Sarah Everard's funeral was held at Heslington Church in York, with friends and family gathering to honour and remember her. During his first court appearance, Sarah Everard's family watched remotely as Wayne Couzens appeared to have a wound on his head and rocked back and forth. He spoke only to confirm his name,
29.
address, and birthday. He was remanded in custody. The true horror of what had happened and the extent of his planning would soon be laid bare.
27.
On the 10th of February, he had logged onto Amazon and spent £2.49 on a police standard issue handcuff key with double locking pin,
12.
something the prosecution said was used to make Sarah think that he was on duty. The prosecution said that the hairbands he had purchased that day were for the purposes
11.
of the planned kidnap and rape, either to be used in a sex act or as restraints. The prosecution said that he proceeded to drive around, hunting for a lone young female to kidnap and rape. He then saw
31.
Sarah Everard. Using his warrant card and handcuffs, he falsely arrested her and put her into the back seat of his vehicle and put her seatbelt on.
5.
He proceeded to drive to Dover, and CCTV caught him on North Military Road at 11:43 p.m, where he put Sarah into his own car. Prosecutor Tom Little QC said, "The fact she had been to a friend's house for dinner at the height of the early 2021 lockdown made her more vulnerable to and more likely to submit to an accusation that she had acted in breach of the COVID regulations in some way. At that time, orders to stay at home were in place, and inside contact with someone not in a support bubble was not allowed."
31.
A female passenger of a car that had driven past them at the side of the road in London saw Sarah being handcuffed. Prosecutor Tom Little said, "Sarah Everard was
35.
compliant, with her head down, and did not appear to be arguing." The court listened as it emerged that Couzens would often wear his police belt, even when not on duty.
32.
They also heard how he set up a profile on a dating site, a profile that contained various lies about himself, and how he had used an escort service. Phone analysis showed that his phone was in the Sibbotswold area from 11:53 p.m. to 3 minutes to 1 in the morning, after Sarah had been kidnapped, which was a place that he was familiar with. During this time, it is believed he raped Sarah before driving back to Dover after 1 a.m. At 2:34 a.m, he went to BP Dover South Services
17.
and bought some soft drinks in a carrier bag. It is thought that Sarah had already been murdered at this point. At 7:30 a.m, his car was back on North Military Road, and the hired Vauxhall was seen driving away. 45 minutes later, he was seen on
30.
CCTV in a Costa coffee shop. buying a drink and a snack. He appeared to be fidgety at the till.
10,
At 8:30, he returned the hire car, having driven more than 300 miles in it. At 11:05 a.m, he was seen in Dover buying a petrol can and filling it at a BP station.
23,
It is believed that this was used in an attempt to murder. During the sentencing hearing, her family gave statements. Her mother Susan said that Sarah had spent her last hours on earth with the very worst of
22.
humanity. She lost her life because Wayne Couzens wanted to satisfy his perverted desires. She told the court that she and her family were going through unbearable suffering, and that Wayne Couzens repulsed her, and that she was outraged that he
33.
masqueraded as a policeman. She explained that her daughter had wanted to marry and become a mother, dreams that had now been cruelly ripped away. Her father said he thought
20.
about what happened to Sarah all the time, saying, "The impact of what you have done will never end. A father wants to look after his children and fix everything, and you have deliberately and with
4.
premeditation stopped my ability to do that." Her sister Katie was overcome with emotion as she explained how Couzens had treated Sarah like she
36.
meant nothing and thrown her away like rubbish. They asked Couzens to look them in the eye as they spoke,
18,
but he did not, apparently due to shame. Jim Sturman QC said that Wayne Couzens felt genuine remorse for his actions. He also argued that a
2.
whole life order was not appropriate, as he had admitted the offence, and it was a single killing as opposed to a serial killer. Sturman said that Couzens deserved a life term with a minimum of 30 years. He said, "He appeared to be living a life as a
27.
law-abiding man with a loving family, and his colleagues described him as calm and friendly. Nothing I say today is at all intended to minimise the horror of what the defendant did that night and after.
33,
He makes no excuses for his actions. He accepts he will receive, and he deserves, a severe punishment. No right-minded person can feel anything other than revulsion
32.
for what he did. He does not seek to make excuses for anything that he did, and he is filled with self-loathing and abject shame."
18,
During the sentencing, Lord Justice Fulford said that the murder had been planned, in all its unspeakably grim detail,
32,
and that all that was missing for Couzens was a victim. He said that Couzens spent at least a month travelling to London to research how best to commit these crimes, emphasising the
14.
degree of preparation and the length of time over which it extended. Lord Justice Fulford said that the seriousness of the case was exceptionally high and, consequently,
17,
resulted in a whole life order, the harshest sentence possible under the law. Lord Justice Fulford said, "Wayne Couzens,
15,
you kidnapped, raped and murdered Sarah Everard, having long planned a violent sexual assault on a yet-to-be selected victim who you intended to coerce into your custody.
12,
You have irretrievably damaged the lives of Sarah Everard's family and friends. Mrs. Everard devastatingly referred to how the wider world has now lost its appeal for her,
8,
and, I would add, no doubt for many others who cared for your victim. And Sarah Everard's sister referred to the inescapable reality of the many lives you have ruined. You have eroded confidence that the public are entitled to have in the police
26.
forces of England and Wales. It is critical that every subject in this country can trust police officers when they encounter them and submit to their authority, which they are entitled
31.
to believe is being exercised in good faith. You have utterly betrayed your family. Your wife and children, who on all the evidence are entirely blameless, will have to live with the ignominy
24.
of your dreadful crimes for the rest of their lives. You have very considerably added to the sense of insecurity that many have living in our cities, perhaps particularly
28.
women, when travelling by themselves and especially at night. During the period before your arrest, there was never a moment when you gave the slightest indication of regret, following perhaps the
13.
realisation of the enormity of the dreadful crimes you had committed. Those consequences are that on the count of murder,
31.
you will be imprisoned for life. And the tariff is a whole life order. I have taken into account the offences of kidnapping and rape in reaching that decision,
2.
and on those counts, I impose no separate penalty. Take him down. And with that, Wayne Couzens was taken
21.
away to begin the rest of his life in detention. The
6.
decision was a landmark one. It was the first time that a whole life order for the murder of one person, where terrorism had not played a part, was given.
7.
Following his sentence, Cressida Dick apologised.
I absolutely know that there are those who feel their trust in us is shaken. I recognise that for some
11.
people, a precious bond of trust has been damaged. Our dedication to you, our public, remains undiminished. As Commissioner, I will do everything in my power to ensure we learn any lessons. I know
6.
that what happened to Sarah, and indeed what has happened to other women in London and beyond in recent times, has raised important questions about women's safety.
00.
Here in the Met, I commit to keep working with others to improve women's safety and reduce the fear of violence.
35.
There are no words that can fully express the fury and overwhelming sadness
18.
that we all feel about what happened to Sarah. I am so sorry.
After his conviction, he was transferred from Belmarsh to
24.
HMP Frankland. In the wake of his sentencing, the police appealed for any information regarding other potential crimes committed by Wayne Couzens, saying, "We continue to build up a picture of Couzens'
2.
career and wider activities. We would like to appeal to anyone who has information of concern about Couzens, whether police colleagues or members of the public, to contact us directly."
5.
The ongoing spotlight put on the Metropolitan Police Force and the culture within its ranks was intense. 12 separate officers were being investigated in relation to the case by the
31.
IOPC. Couzens had allegedly garnered the nickname "the Rapist" by his colleagues at the Civil Nuclear Constabulary, due to him making female co-workers feel uneasy and uncomfortable. Senior investigating
16.
officer Simon Harding told Sky News that the nickname was not used by many people, and that a lot of people didn't notice he was this person. Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police Force Nick Fgrave refuted the claims that he was referred
12.
to as the rapist, saying, "That is not something that was made aware to us." However, Sir Tom Windsor, the Chief Inspector of Constabulary, would later confirm that this nickname
32.
was true on BBC Radio 4's World at One, when he was asked if he was aware of the nickname. He said, "Yes, I do know that." And he also allegedly had a reputation in terms of drug abuse, extreme pornography, and other offences of this kind. He would also later say that he was concerned about an alleged culture of colleague protection. In too many respects, they are failing to take appropriate action and throw these people out. A retired
18.
Metropolitan Police Sergeant with 30 years' experience in the force, Graham Wetton, said, "I have never heard a nickname like that before. Why would you call somebody that?" And in a police
31.
environment, it raises alarm bells. The National Chair of the Police Federation of England and Wales, John Apter, called Wayne Couzens an absolute disgrace to the police service,
28.
and said that he was ashamed he was ever a police officer. He said, "I am proud to carry a warrant card, but this vile individual's abuse of that authority has cast a shadow on all those who work within policing. He has brought disgrace to our
31.
uniform. The way he took advantage of Sarah's trust makes me feel sick to the stomach." How Cousins had been able to join the Metropolitan Police Force was also
16.
called into question. The Met said in a statement that although he had passed the vetting process, they said a range of
23.
checks may not have been undertaken correctly. They also said they might not have checked a car that was registered to him and linked to the 2015 allegation of indecent exposure.
29.
Confirming that the Met Police were unaware of the 2015 allegation, whether this was down to his former employer at the CNC or their checks. They said in a statement to Sky News,
25.
Wayne Cousins was vetted in accordance with his role. Following his arrest, a review confirmed he passed vetting processes. The checks confirmed there was no information available to the Met at that time that would have changed the
35.
vetting decision. Cousins was not subject to any misconduct proceedings during his time at the Met. A non-statutory inquiry was also launched, examining how he was able
27.
to, in spite of concerns regarding his conduct and behaviour, work in 3 different police forces. When Cousins joined the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Unit in February of 2020, he had not been given enhanced vetting, and reports said that this was due to a rush to try and recruit as many officers as possible, following the terrorist attacks in Paris in 2017. It was also reported that Cousins had not finished the 2-year probationary period, which was mandatory, before he began working with the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command.
29.
In September 2021, the IOPC issued a statement saying, "We have served a total of 12 gross misconduct or misconduct notices on police officers from several forces as we continue to investigate the matters linked to the conduct
18.
of PC Cousins." Several notices related to allegations that officers had not behaved in accordance with professional behaviour standards by using a messaging app to share information about
10.
Cousins' prosecution. Another probe was made into allegations that 3 Metropolitan Police officers, who were still in their probationary period with the force, had shared an inappropriate graphic depicting violence against women with colleagues via WhatsApp. Although they were not
29.
on duty at the time, one of them would later man a cordon at one of the search sites. A separate inquiry was also being made into the allegation of him exposing himself in McDonald's
25.
a few days before Sarah was abducted, and the 2 investigating officers were being examined for possible breaches of professional standards. And another investigation was being made into the allegation of indecent exposure back in 2015.
22.
The Home Secretary Preeti Patel announced that she would review whether or not police officers fully use the existing powers to deal with men who either commit indecent exposure or sexually
13.
harass women. She urged female victims of male harassment and violence to share their experiences and help form a new strategy to protect women. In the initial 10-week survey, more than 15,000 responses were lodged, and the Home Office said they expected the number to rise, potentially more than doubling in the preceding weeks. In October 2021, it was reported that police were looking into an allegation that Wayne
23.
Cousins had sexually assaulted and harassed a drag queen at a bar. The drag queen had reported the incident to the police following Sarah's highly publicised case. Also in October, another shocking story hit the headlines.
34.
Radio DJ Emma B said that in 2008 she had been walking in Greenwich, London, with her baby son in a pram after dropping her daughter at school. She said a man had shouted,
27.
"Hey," at her. When she turned around, he exposed himself.
Wayne Cousins, you believe, was the person you saw. When did you first put those 2 things together? Because, of course, you know, very unfortunately, here's a name that we now know, and it's a face that we've become familiar looking at in light of what happened to Sarah.
It was immediate. That's what I've reported back to the Met and to the IOPC. It was immediate. And I said to my husband immediately, I think that's him. And I let it settle for a couple of days, and I called a few girlfriends and, you know, said, do you remember the time when when that happened in Greenwich, they were, yeah. And I said, I think it's him. So it was immediate. And I kind of just, you have to be obviously cautious and careful about saying things like this out loud. But it was very specific in the way that I described him initially to the police when they first came around. It's a face that doesn't go anywhere, it stays with you. And it was only and then after a week or two of me just Googling and seeing some more pictures and reassuring myself, I think there were more reports of previous behaviour that seemed to add to me needing to say something and report that back.
And I know that this is now with the police again.
Yes.
We've got a statement. The Met Police spokesman has said, with regards to the incident in 2008, police were called in November 2008 after a woman reported she was pushing a pram in Blackwall Lane, SE10, when a man called out to her. She turned and found he'd exposed himself and was touching himself inappropriately. She went into a nearby shop. Police were alerted. A search of the area was conducted, but the man had left. CCTV inquiries were unsuccessful. The incident was passed to the local Safer Neighbourhoods team for intelligence, and in terms of it being Wayne Couzens, to the best of our knowledge, we are not aware of any reports prior to his March arrest when he was named as a suspect. Of course, if we receive any allegation, we will assess and investigate accordingly. But in terms of your strength of recognition of him, as you say, that was pretty instant. How did that make you feel that could have been the same person?
The part of the interview that took place when the police came over to my house was when they thought it was really quite amusing when I was detailing, because of their questioning, detailing, quite graphically what they needed to know. But I remember, and I've said this again, time and time again, I remember clearly saying to them, I really hope that this is all he needs to do. And I said that at the time because I was so struck by how feeble their response was. I said then, I really hope that this is all he needs to do. And there's a big part of me that really hopes it wasn't him, because if it was, this is horrific.
Also in October of 2021, The Times reported that prior to his arrest, Wayne Couzens had shared grossly offensive, racist and misogynistic material in a group chat with other officers. This came as yet another blow to the Metropolitan Police Force, who had been trying to rebuild and restore their reputation. Commissioner Cressida Dick said that an investigation would be launched into all current allegations of domestic abuse or sexual misconduct against London police officers, and a review of any allegations made over the last 10 years would take place too. On the 10th of February 2022, Cressida Dick announced that she would resign as Commissioner, as she had lost the support of the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. This was a matter of hours after she said she had no intention of leaving her role.
Last week I made clear to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner the scale of the change I believe is urgently required to rebuild the trust and confidence of Londoners in the Met and to root out the racism, sexism, homophobia, bullying, discrimination and misogyny that still exists. I am not satisfied with the Commissioner's response. On being informed of this, Dame Cressida Dick has offered her resignation, which I have accepted.
It is quite clear that the Mayor no longer has sufficient confidence in my leadership of the Metropolitan Police Service for me to continue as Commissioner. He has left me no choice but to step aside. I say this with deep sadness and regret. The murder of Sarah Everard and many other awful cases recently have, I know, damaged confidence in this fantastic police service. There is much to do, and I know that the Met has turned its full attention to rebuilding trust and confidence and to raising our standards. I am very optimistic for the future of the Met and for London.
To mark the anniversary of her disappearance, a walk was organised by Urban Angels in memory of those lost to gender-based violence, beginning at Clapham North Station and ending at the bandstand of Clapham Common. It marked where the first vigil had been held.
The purpose of the event is to give the community an opportunity to come together to commemorate all victims of gendered violence, and also pay respect to and remember those women that have lost their lives.
In March 2022, it was reported that Wayne Couzens had been charged with 4 counts of indecent exposure from between January and February of 2021. During his first court appearance to answer for these charges, he requested to have a Crown Court jury trial. In May, he appeared at the Old Bailey Courthouse in London via a video link and entered pleas of not guilty in relation to the charges of indecent exposure. Also that month, it was announced that High Court judges had ruled that the Met had breached the human rights to freedom of speech and freedom of assembly of those who had been arrested at the first vigil. And in August 2022, those who had been arrested were told they would not face prosecution, as the Crown Prosecution Service said it was not in the public interest. Wayne Couzens lodged an appeal against his conviction, but in July 2022, the Court of Appeal upheld the whole life order.
We are today handing down our written judgment in cases concerning the sentences of 4 offenders convicted of murder and 1 of manslaughter. The second concerns Wayne Couzens, who pleaded guilty to kidnap and rape of Sarah Everard, and later he pleaded guilty to her murder. On the 30th of September 2021, he was sentenced to imprisonment for life for the murder with a whole life order. No separate penalty was imposed for the offences of kidnapping and rape. Couzens seeks leave to appeal against sentence. In his case, we grant leave to appeal against sentence but dismiss the appeal. Although the circumstances of his case do not fall within the terms of the statutory provision which provides that a whole life order should be the normal starting point, the individual facts are such that the judge was entitled, exceptionally, to impose a whole life order. That concludes this short hearing.
Court rise.
For many, the case of Sarah Everard was a watershed moment. It brought issues surrounding personal safety, sexual harassment, and violence against women under the spotlight, as well as the culture within the Metropolitan Police Force and beyond. Reclaim the Streets set up a fundraiser to support women's charities, and more than £500,000 was raised. Police officers in the United Kingdom take an oath, promising to serve with fairness, integrity, diligence and impartiality, upholding fundamental human rights, and according equal respect to all people. Part of the oath reads, "I will, to the best of my skill and knowledge, discharge all the duties thereof faithfully, according to the law." Wayne Couzens broke this oath in the most shocking way imaginable, and also broke the trust that members of the public place in police officers. Her case brought the police under scrutiny and continued the conversation about gender-based violence and the safety, or lack thereof, that many feel when in public, especially at night or on their own. The damage this case caused to so many people is immeasurable. The public's trust in the police suffered heavily, and for many it will take a long time for it to be restored. For Sarah's family and friends, she was irreplaceable. A funny, kind and caring woman. Her life was taken in an appalling and grotesque way by someone she should have been able to trust. Sarah Everard was simply trying to get home.
5. 3. 11. 13. 24. 26. 34.